this year has been, there's a lot of challenges in the industry, right? But there's also opportunities as well. And the intention with this panel is to have a conversation around some of the most pressing challenges and opportunities in IT staffing today, like the IT talent shortage, different strategies for talent acquisition, like direct sourcing, the disruption of the recruiting space, with all the different technologies and the rapid pace of innovation, and also diversity and inclusion, right? Which it's a very important topic for many organizations today. So, in order to have this, I invited our panelists, and we have Cesar Jimenez, CEO and founder of MyBasePay, Hank Levine, CEO and president of iPlace USA, Toni Harrison-Hogan, Senior Director of Technology for Under Armour, and also part of the DE&I Council member for SIM. And John Bemis, President and CEO of Benchmark IT. And to start us off, I want to continue the conversation on the IT talent shortage. It's a big topic, right? And it's the main reason why most of us are here, having conversations around that. And despite the growth that we've seen in the amount of job openings, it's still a challenge to find qualified talent. And I wanted to start the conversation there and ask you, what are, from your experience, right, what are some of the things that we could do to fix this talent shortage? And Hank, I want to toss it to you first. And before answering the question, too, if you want to expand more on your background and iPlace USA, please feel free to do that as well.
All right, so very briefly on iPlace USA, we are a large recruiting company with over 600 recruiters, and we're working in 21 countries. As far as the IT, the challenge of hiring IT professionals, I would say that there are things that you can do in the more immediate term, and there's certain things that are more of long-term solutions. So in the more immediate term, the simplest thing to do is to remove every restriction from job orders that isn't a requirement. I would say the biggest one of all is remote work. For the life of me, there are some jobs that can be done remotely, and companies still won't allow remote workers. And that's, it's a candidate market, right? So you got to do what the candidates want. When you allow remote work, you not only make candidates happier, but you can now recruit not only from the whole country, but from the whole world. Saying we heard other people talk today about college degrees. I would go to the hiring manager, and I would go through every single element of a job order and say, if I found the perfect candidate, but she didn't have this, would you still hire her? And if the hiring manager says yes, it's off. All right. The second thing I would do is kind of a brute strength approach. If you looked at things when there were more candidates around, a recruiter might be able to get 10, 12 good send-outs a week. Now the number is more typically 6 to 8. So if you're going to get the same number of send-outs, you need more recruiters. And you can either hire them internally, or you can use an offshore company to do that. Going a little longer term, I think the best way to attack the skill shortage is through immigration. So I'll challenge everyone to do a little thought experiment. I know immigration is a very hot political topic, but let's flip things around. Pretend that you took the top 10 technical universities in the United States, and a large portion of their graduates were going overseas because they felt they could make more money and they could have better career opportunities. If that happened in the United States, our country would go nuts. Right? It would be a national emergency, and they would find some way to stop it. But That's exactly what happens when you let H-1Bs and stuff come into our country. These are the people coming from the best universities in other countries, from the richest families, and they're the most capable people in the country, and it's their country's brain drain, and it's coming to us. When you don't let them in, that's just counterproductive. And you can look no further than Silicon Valley, right? Half the companies in Silicon Valley are created by immigrants. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a job-creating game. All right, looking a little longer term, a lot longer term, there's a lot you can do around training and in retraining people into other skills, but I would again say that is probably more difficult and a longer-term solution.
Thank you, Hank. Cesar, Tony, John, anything?
I mean, those are excellent points. I mean, I like to add, I hear you see it all over the place, posted all over the place, talent shortage issue. It's almost like I'm tired of seeing it. I don't even know if it's not a talent. I like to tell people, I say, is it a talent supply issue or is it a talent engagement issue? Like, just to kind of reiterate what Hank's saying, I think cut the restrictions. Are people capable? Can people, like I love the gentleman that was speaking earlier, impact. Do you really need that 4-year degree to actually do the job if you have the experience? I think that, organizations, I think the better us as, practitioners in this business have earlier conversations with our customers about having a seat at the table as far as workforce planning, start understanding there are other alternatives to hire people outside the normal channels, right? There's hiring platforms, there's nearshore, there's offshore, you've got to consider every channel, because the one channel you're working right now is not working. So that's when you're going to have those supply issues. So my personal opinion, my take on the, as far as the current shortage, is really more of an engagement issue. A lot of candidates don't want full-time work. They want to stay consultants. So you got to be able to look at your organization. Do I fit this? Do I have an FTE? Do I turn it into a contract position? Do I turn it into, gig? Do I turn to freelance communities? There's so many different avenues to hire right now, and you really got to listen to what the talent-led market really is saying right now, and you got to match it to your requirements to see what works. That's just my opinion.
I'd like to add on to that. I think when you're thinking about talent shortage, right, and the engagement part, I think we need to start flipping it, because we always, from a hiring standpoint or a corporate hiring standpoint, it's like what's in it for them. I think we need to flip it and say what's in it for the employee, what's in it for the teammate. Because if you start changing that paradigm, you're going to really be able to attract that top talent. You'll be able to retain that top talent, because you're always focused on the individual, not the corporate results.
Yep, I agree. And I'm wondering if any of you have seen much work going global. Like, I know some of our clients are starting to open up, remote is fine, but in the U.S. or in the Eastern time zone. But, can that person do that work sitting in Europe? Can they do it, sitting? You see a lot of job orders, Hank. I don't know if you're starting to see some clients open up. Doesn't matter what time zone you're in or what country you're in.
We absolutely see it. So we have clients in Europe, and they're hiring IT talent everywhere. Mm-hmm. So we're hiring people for them in India. We just hired some people from Singapore. They hire people from the United States. These are clients in Sweden.
Right. So it's just a question, the question of verifying and being able to pay them legally, and there's some complex issues around doing that. But it's good that companies are getting creative.
Yeah. So typically, that's what companies like that use employers of record, so they can be compliant in all these other countries.
Yeah. Just to just kind of adding, Tony, I like what you said about flipping it around and actually listening to the talent community, right?
Yes.
Understanding and then creating a strategy to say, what kind of compromise can we make, because these traditional avenues of hiring are not working, right? So we have to listen and create something that's going to be attractive. Create an employer value proposition that's going to make people want to apply to your organization.
Cesar, and that's a perfect segue into, because you're talking about traditional sourcing avenues, right? And one of the biggest trends we've been noticing is the direct sourcing, right? Trend as companies look to solve the talent challenge, right? And direct sourcing is defined as a company leveraging their own brand to attract talent, right, and not engaging on third party. And I want to throw that question in there with direct sourcing, and get your perspective on what are some of the advantages that you see or disadvantages when implementing direct sourcing as a way to attract talent.
Sure. No, that's probably the biggest and hottest, the new trend. It's like what the VMS was 15 years ago, right? So now they have this new model that is still, there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go in that area. It's not as mature yet. There's not a lot of programs standing up, but I will tell you that currently right now I believe it's about 86% of Fortune 500 companies have a direct sourcing program in their organization. So what that means, just to break it down, is that they're leveraging they're taking control, right? The employer says, you know what, I need more control and hiring has to be my priority. And what they're doing is they're leveraging their employer brand. They spend millions of dollars like Coca-Cola, right? Or any one of these major brands out there. And they're going out to market and building their own contingent talent pools. And the issue with that is that, staffing is a science. You guys all know this, right? Us in the recruiting business, it's not just putting up ads and putting people in a database. You have to make sure that you are engaging with your talent pool. It's very different than actually, from an FTE hire to a contingent hire. There's a whole new set of rules that you have to follow. So I look at that, a lot of people ask, is there a threat or is it an opportunity? I think it's a little bit of both. I think that low-hanging fruit, general basic skill sets, I think a lot of clients can hire on their own. They can hire and curate talent and hire general type skill sets. I think there's an opportunity for a lot of staffing firms to help companies in that journey as talent curators, right? Help them do that journey. Be an insider or someone else will, right? Be part of that process. Be part of that change. Help them be successful in a direct sourcing strategy. And then you're going to wind up, you're the incumbent and you're going to wind up getting the rest of the market share anyway, versus waiting for them to call you when they have a need and they're going to hit the supplier list, right? There's a ton of opportunities to partner with direct sourcing technologies. There's a lot of opportunities to partner with ER companies like ourselves where, there's an opportunity for an employer record and payrolling within a direct sourcing program because they need to separate. They can't have any co-employment issues, right? You got to be able to have a program, a platform in place to make sure you pay people compliantly, right? So those are some of the, I would say, threats and I think also opportunities. But I would definitely, being a staffing professional in this business, a practitioner, I'm paying a whole lot of attention to direct sourcing right now. It has to be. It's not going to go away. And I've met with several different program, like contingent workforce program executives, and I will share with you, the biggest thing is not saving money. It's actually taking control of the hiring. Because suppliers, you're not their only client, right? How do they know their suppliers? Are you prioritizing their needs, right? With the war for talent and this shortage and engagement, whatever you want to call it, they need to make sure. So that's why you see I think right now, there's a study that showed out there's more recruiter openings than there are software engineers in the U.S. right now. And most of them are corporate, and they're competing with agency salaries and then some. So they're taking control. And we need to, in my opinion, we should be part of that change and create opportunities for ourselves in this new movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cesar, how would you contrast that with VMS, MSP? I mean, the VMS, MSP are very mature. They've been around 15 years, as you say. Probably 87% of the Fortune 500 probably has some sort of VMS or MSP.
Absolutely.
Why are they feeling like they need to go to direct sourcing?
More control of the hiring. What they're trying to do is have direct sourcing is a proactive talent acquisition strategy. And it's separate. It's a separate lane. It's another source. VMS and MSP is one source, and direct sourcing is a completely different controlled by TA directly, versus outsourcing to a VMS that's going to control the supplier pool of suppliers.
So do you think it's about really lowering their costs? Do you think it's about the timeline? Because I know I experienced this. The timeline when you engage an MSP or a vendor management service, from the time that you have that meeting, be able to get the resumes, then actually qualify and bring that on board, that teammate on, it could be 60 days.
Absolutely.
And so I look at outsourcing, right? Bringing that outsourcing in really reduces that timeline because they have that pipeline.
Sure.
They have that pipeline that they can really monitor what they're being paid, their benefits, because that's very much needed when you're a contingent worker. That keeps them a contingent worker in some cases. And then also, too, it's much easier to flip them to full-time.
Absolutely. Those are great points. I would say direct sourcing, one of the benefits of direct sourcing that we see out there is that as they build these teams and you have a talent curator as a partner, which it could be a staffing organization, is that they're actually practically building the talent pipelines for you versus your in-house staff. That's where the opportunity lies for the staffing firms out there. This is where I say it's not necessarily a threat. This is where you can create more opportunity for yourself. They're meeting with the business, they're understanding, okay, what are the in-demand, what are the hard-to-fill positions? And let me start building those talent communities and keep them engaged. Because it's not just filling up a database with available resources, because those available resources are there for a day and they're gone the next day, right? So it's keeping them engaged and having the technology in place to make sure that the automation is there to keep that database very active. And as they get the opportunities, what they're doing is they're marketing those contingent openings over to those talent communities first before they hit the suppliers.
Well, that's certainly one of the big challenges in VMS MSP is, by the way they're designed, the recruiters who have the candidates are not given any future view of what's going on, are not even supposed to talk to the managers about what your next initiative is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you need 5 Java programmers, and we're, okay, let me go find some.
Yeah.
So whereas with a curated talent pool, or what we do for our best clients, and all of our staffing firms do this for our best clients, we know what's coming down the pike, we're pipelining, and we've got people ready. So, you're basically just trying to shift that, basically create the valued client model, but even tighter on the inside.
Absolutely.
Last year, I actually did some work with a staffing firm in Atlanta, Georgia. And her issue was really being able to create that diverse pipeline. And so I think having direct sourcing or MSP or VMS is a benefit in some ways, right? Because they can do the legwork for you around creating that diverse pipeline for you. They can already have those candidates vetted, qualified, and then as you need the talent to staff projects or full-time roles or for growth purposes, you have that pipeline there.
That's a great
This is a
point.
perfect segue, Tony, since you're mentioning that diverse talent pipeline, into another big trend, which is DE&I, right? Diversity and inclusion, and because all the recent changes with technology, the new way of doing business, the societal changes that have happened recently, there's more focus than ever into cultivating a diverse talent pool, right? And one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what can we do, from the recruiting perspective? What are some of the things that we could change to foster a more diverse workforce?
Yeah. Great question. I think most of us, when you say recruiting diverse talent, where we go, right? Machine learning, AI. But the only issues with, especially with AI, if you don't have governance body, you don't have an ethics strategy, you're going to infuse unconscious bias in that process as well. So we all understand the recruiting process from attract to the decision making is flawed, right? We all know that. We all come with our unconscious bias, regardless who you are and how good you are as a person. And so I think one of the things, and I think you touched on it, is I know for me, I'm really working hard to create that employee value proposition. And so in my job descriptions and things like that, I always make sure that that is stated in there, because I want the candidate to have a sense of what the tower or the vision that they're going to be joining and how they're going to be able to advance and what's the culture of that team. Because that seems, for me, that seems to have helped with trying to find that unique talent. So that's one issue. I think another great way is starting to highlight and showcase your diverse talent you have in your organization, right? Everybody's on some social platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. There's a couple more I'm probably forgetting. But I do believe, right, I think it was a commercial last year that I just loved. I can't think of the retail brand, but they highlighted all other female executives. And that was a great example of how they were approaching their employee value proposition by showcasing how they are committed to women and advancement in all sectors, just not IT. Making sure that they understand when women are a part of the team, we come with different types of expectations and also different obligations as it relates to family and other outside work-life integration activities. So that was a great commercial. And if I kind of tracked it, after they went live with that commercial, they have increased their talent pipeline, increased their hiring of diverse talent. So that's an example. And then I think the other example too is holding talent acquisition accountable, right? Making sure that there is a business-driven or business outcome-driven type of metric strategy that really drives the recruiter's performance, drives their decision-making, and because it's based on data, not based on their preferences or understanding of what they think what the role should look like or the candidate should look like who's filling the role. And then also, too, it gives you some data around your organization from a D&I's perspective.
Cesar, Hank, John, any follow-up comments or thoughts on that?
I really like what Tony said. I think there's a big distinction between the recruiting part of getting diverse candidates. There's a lot of things you can do just in recruiting. You can go to custom search engine, and you can go to diverse job boards and so forth to identify the candidates. But in my experience, because we do work with several large companies on diversity hiring, if after they're hired, if they don't have a good experience and it doesn't kind of reinforce itself and bring in more people, there's a lot of effort that goes poof. And I will tell you, the companies we worked with, I would say half of them are doing diversity for marketing. The other half are doing diversity because they truly believe it. But even the ones that truly believe in it and are very committed to it, when people get hired there, it's challenging. They don't always feel welcome. And the other big challenge, I would say, is if they start to do well, then they have a big brand name on their resume, and they're a diverse candidate, and the whole world comes after them. And so these companies have to keep them.
It's a hot candidate.
And and it's hard to keep them because they're a superstar now. So it's really much broader than just the recruiting part of it.
And Tony, I know you. Sorry, I forgot that you had mentioned that you had a definition of DE&I. So I think that's important to.
Last night I had a late night, so I decided to Google. There are thousands and thousands of definitions of diversity. I couldn't even count, right? I mean, by that time of night, I knew it was it was like a lot of zeros, right? Yeah. So I really wanted to make sure that as we kind of talk about diversity and inclusion, we are all on the same page as the traditional definition of diversity. So I don't want to mess it up, so I actually wrote it out. So diversity is any dimension that can be used to differentiate groups of people from one another. These dimensions are race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, social and economic status, age, physical abilities, and neurodiverse abilities, religious beliefs, and other ideologies. So when we think about diversity, we always go to what? Race.
Race.
But race is important, right? But there's other dimensions as well. that sometimes lead to teammates after they're hired to have that same mantra, I'm not being seen or heard. So equity ensures everyone has access to the same treatment, opportunities, and advancement. It aims to identify and eliminate barriers that prevent full participation. And then the last one's inclusion is a state of being, valued, respected, and supported. It's about focusing on the needs of every individual and ensuring the right conditions are in place for each person to achieve their full potential. So as I've been here since Sunday, spending time with my SIM members and peers, we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and everyone had their own definition.
Yes, I agree.
So for us to really move the needle on D&I, we have to come to some common ground on what it is. If not, we're going to keep missing the boat.
100% agree with that, and thank you for doing the research on that. And it's important for us to align on the definition, right? Because if we're looking to tackle challenges, we first need to get aligned. Like, what does it mean to be, DE&I focused, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think even maybe more important is why diversity matters, right? So equity is a very, very nice concept, but I don't think in a capitalistic society it's going to rule the day because companies are going to do what makes them money. And the good thing about diversity is it will make you money because there are endless studies that show that diverse teams outperform teams where everybody is the same. And the reason they do that is because when you come from different backgrounds, you have different life experiences. Your brain actually develops differently. It's neuroplasticity, right? And if you're presented with the same opportunity or problem, you will come up with different solutions. And if you have more solutions on the table, on average, you will make better decisions and less risky decisions. But that's only true if you listen to the people who have diverse ideas. And so if you have a company that's run by a bunch of men and you have a bunch of brilliant women in the company and they're having great ideas but no one listens to them, it doesn't matter that you're diverse, right?
That's a good point.
And so, I think that two values that are absolutely connected is respect and diversity. Because respect means you'll listen to people. And diversity means you'll have different ideas and more options.
A couple things on that. I mean, that's both of you guys great points. Diversity, I would say that I would love to see corporations and a little more ownership around teaching and some awareness around what diversity is. I think it's, and to spread that across organizations, I think that's going to be more effective. And like those type of examples that you mentioned, like some data demonstrating that more diverse teams are more successful. I mean, that's hard data. That's great. That's great news. And actually, I wanted to share something. I can't take it away from her. This a friend of mine, Michelle, from Gartner, we had her on a podcast that we have, and she said something to me that really resonated. She said, diversity is really about diversity of thought, right? Perspectives. And that hit me. That kind of changed my, thinking of diversity and kind of like the why behind it and why it matters.
But when you talk about diversity of thought, you can have diversity of thought, but if you don't have a sense of belonging in the organization, 100%. It really doesn't matter. So we're back to the same statement I made, not being seen, not being heard. Yeah. And so belonging really is, like I said, it's about that security and acceptance in your work group, in your company, and making sure that you feel a part. You're not, and also you're bringing your authentic self to the table as well.
100%.
And when a company focuses on belonging, once they get through diversity, right? They get through inclusion and equity. The next step is belonging, and that's when they're going to see an increase in productivity, typically around over 50%. If you look at their promoter scores, they will increase over 100+%. And then also you see a reduction in turnover and sick time. And basically that translates into millions and millions of dollars for a corporation every year.
Perfect. And want to make sure we leave some room for Q&A from the audience. But before we jump into that, another big trend is the whole disruption of technology, right, in the industry. And I wanted to get your take on how has this rapid, technological disruption, how has this affected your business personally, and where do you see the next biggest growth opportunity for the staffing industry? And John, I want to start with you on that, get your take on that.
Sure. Well, as all of us staffing companies that are here know, I mean, technology has really changed the business a lot in the last, let's say, 5 years. It's really made a lot of difference. Recruiting has a tradition of being sort of old school, get in the office, sit down, get on the phone, and it's changed dramatically. And the people managing the companies have had to change and leverage technology a lot. I just noticed the other day, I looked on Dice, and there's a new switch on the top of Dice where you can flip the switch, and it's a DEI switch, and it's supposed to, sort of change what you see in the resumes to help reduce discrimination. Which is interesting. It's a brand new feature. I just noticed the other day.
That's great.
So we have to get a little training for our team on that. But, digital recruiting, I mean, the term is so broad. I just thought I'd just, zero in on a few areas that I think we're all going through in the staffing business in the last few years. What is digital recruiting? It's everything. I mean, ever since the beginning of COVID, and we stopped using desk phones, and now everything is VoIP. We don't even have any paper in our office anymore. Everything is totally paperless. So everything is digital. But I think the definition for us is the tools we use, that our clients use and our candidates use in the hiring process is probably, digital recruitment. And a few of the areas that are really impacted, you talk about the talent shortage, you've got to get out to a relatively small talent base pretty quickly. So digital recruiting tools have helped us fill up the top of the funnel. That's my friend Sean Manley, who's on one of my groups, my Tom Nunn group, said it really well the other day. He said, these tools help us really engage with the candidates and so that we can spend more time closing the candidates. The human time, what the recruiters value is really once we speak with the candidate, and then we can start to evaluate and get some control. But the tools can really help us. You mentioned, Hank, that there's so few recruiters out there, and it's so hard to hire recruiters, and they're not as productive because the talent is scarce. So, you can use the tool to help you get that, go from that maybe that 8 submittals back up to 10 or 12 by using the tool. So, filling up that top of the funnel, better communication. It used to just be all email. Now we're leveraging texting. We're leveraging LinkedIn messaging. LinkedIn now lets you, send 25 emails at a time. That's powerful. LinkedIn has some interesting AI now where every time you do a search, it's giving you kind of a lookalike search off to the side, and it's showing you, here are some candidates that look like your search. It used to be, you'd have to set up a saved search and then go back and it would email you results the next day. This algorithm is constantly helping you, it's changing as you change your search, which is just more efficient for recruiters, and they like it. They like the communication of being in a text string that stays together instead of emails that are all over your inbox. And chatbots. I think chatbots have had a pretty big impact in helping us, engage with candidates and get to the point where, yes, you're somebody that I should talk to because you've got the basic qualifications and you're available, so I'm going to spend my time talking to you. So those are areas. And then all of that has been impacted by automation. And we've spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 years on automations. So it's not just one reach out from a recruiter, it's an automation that sends out 2 or 3 or 4 emails and stops once the person responds or when the person says, no, I'm not interested. But, how many times does a recruiter really try to reach out to someone? How many times does a salesperson make a call? Not never enough. but we can use, but, and recruiters, too, they make the one call, do they ever call the person again? No, because they're too busy. But so automations are huge. And automations can help with onboarding, take the drudgery out of onboarding, consultant care. We don't call our working candidates enough, but we can be emailing them a survey, texting them a survey. And so, last time you talked to the candidate, everything was fine, but 2 weeks later, there could be a problem. Your little survey goes out, you're alerted to a problem, you call them, you're doing a better job. Our candidates really like that. You can keep your database up to date with automation. These tools are really wonderful, I think. Sense, Herefish are two of the big ones. They're unlimited except by the time you have to dream up what you can use them for and the time to implement, but they're really great tools. Calendaring tools, people are starting to use Calendly and the calendaring built into LinkedIn. I think the days of recruiters coming in and making 50 calls a day are over. My recruiters are coming in now and they've got 7 or 8 or 9 calendared calls already agreed to with the candidate set up yesterday on their calendar for today. So they're spending their time more productively with candidates and less time just who picks up their cell phone anymore anyway. My wife, I don't even know who's calling. If I, it's like, so setting up calls really helps. It's helped improve the client experience. We used to just email resumes to clients. You email a resume, the client gets another 150 emails during the day, can't find your candidate. So now tools like 3DIQ or Candidately, create like a client portal. So the client's hiring activity is all in one place. I really like that. And clients are really starting to like it. Web shopping, where the clients can sort of self-service your database and look at your candidates abstract when on their time, not just when you happen to catch them, on the phone. People like to shop online, so these tools are letting us offer that to our clients. Just two other areas. One is feedback. I think these digital tools have really let us collect in real time how we're doing. Reviews that we get through our Great Recruiters tool are giving us immediate feedback on our recruiters, how they're doing, our salespeople, how are they doing with their clients. That's really good for employee development. It's really good for marketing. Google reviews, the same thing. I really like the fact that since people shop online, they can go online, they're finding us, they see that we get good reviews. That's really powerful. And then the last thing kind of goes along with how are we doing is who are we dealing with? Digital verification of candidates. Now, this is a kind of a new area, and I think there's going to be some talk here at TechServe about this product, Verimark. But we have a real problem in the industry with, falsified resume, inflated resumes. Especially with remote work. Who is that person that I just interviewed? Are they the person they say they are? Is the person who's now logging on with the computer the person I interviewed? So we have a real identity management problem, and all it takes is a few bad apples, and all of a sudden clients think everybody's a fake, and recruiters are totally skeptical. So I think there's some technology coming using blockchain, et cetera, that will help us know who our candidates are and help them prove that they are who they said they are and they have what they say they have. So I think that's going to help everybody. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Sean, for a very thorough list.
We've come a long way from the faxing resume.
Tony, Hank, Cesar, any other trends trends that you're excited about in terms of technology or anything else that you've noticed in the industry?
I think all of us, right, in our LinkedIn box, emails, sometimes even phone calls. I don't know how to get your phone number. But, we get bombarded with recruiters all the time asking us, do you want a job? But I think if you really want top talent, right, they're not going to respond to a generated LinkedIn email, because we all know what they look like, right? I think we need to take the time and go back to old school, to your point, right? There's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and having a conversation and saying, We are interested in you. This is why. What are you doing right now? Are you still enjoying your opportunity, your current opportunity? Do you see advancement? I think we need to go back. I love technology, right? Been in it for 15 years. I'm a techie at heart. But still, that rich conversation is very important if you want to find top talent and be able to secure them and move them from, so it's not really a talent shortage, it's really moving that top talent from where they are today to your company. And you can't do that just with generic emails, in my opinion.
No, I 1,000% agree with you. And I think I have to put a plug for a friend of mine, but definitely, if you guys haven't read it, Robot Proof Recruiter, please get it. You're going to love it. I mean, it's kind of what I like about it's best of both worlds, though, because, I mean, John, you have so many great points on, there's so much that our recruiters spend time on that they really shouldn't have to. And that automation really kind of solves that problem for us, because the challenge that we are facing, we're always competing. We have to fill that rec within a certain period of time. So you have to have this automation to kind of serve those candidates and spend more time talking to them. So it's kind of having, like, what I like about both perspectives, it's having best of both worlds. You have to have those quality conversations. You have to have, the generated emails, when I see that happening, we got to stop. Okay? I mean, you really have to, curate, an approach. You have to really understand and call out certain specific things with an organization to show your real interest, that you really you're not a robot, you really took an interest in their background. You want to talk to them about an opportunity. So those are the things. So I think technology, if we're not moving along with it, it's a mistake. But I think we can sprinkle some of that old school on top of that technology
It's
to make it
all
seem
about
better.
having more people-to-people conversations, and the technology just helps you get there.
Yes, sir.
Because if not, I think we're all losing the art of conversation and the art of selling by engaging.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And as a way to wrap it up, before we give the audience the opportunity to ask questions, I wanted to get your number one takeaway that you would like the audience to take home as we wrap up this panel. A quick 30, 60-second, one main takeaway. And Cesar, we'll start with you and we'll move.
And I was hoping to kind of take some of it. Because I guess I talk about it all the time. I would say, direct sourcing is for real. It's for real. I mean, think about 15 years ago where VMSs weren't going to work. It works. It's an incumbent. There's no way around it. But also, there was a great opportunity, even though it was a threat to many staffing firms at first. There was a lot of resistance. It became a great opportunity, right? Same thing with direct sourcing. I think direct sourcing is a better opportunity at VMS because it allows, like, you don't have the gates blocking you. You're going to have that direct contact with your client. And if you're not having those conversations with your best clients today, somebody else will, and it's happening. So definitely, I mean, that's one thing I would love. Obviously, my contact information, you can reach me on LinkedIn if you want to talk about direct sourcing. But that's stuff that I guess I want to make sure you guys leave with. It's spend some time and see how that, you can add that, to your organization as an offering potentially, and how can you guys win in that and help your customers out.
Thank you, Cesar. Hank?
There are so many great points made today. If I could kind of just sum up. When it comes to hiring diverse candidates or hiring, more senior level candidates, the people factor is huge, all right? So I think we are going to see more and more technology. I think that technology is going to really become pervasive at more low labor cost jobs, more entry-level jobs, frankly, for economic reasons, because a recruiter cannot spend 5 hours with a low-level candidate because there's not enough money to be made on placing that person. So that really makes it viable for technology to come in and remove a lot of those recruiter tasks. But when you get to more senior jobs, or you get to diverse candidates, where understanding them and having a conversation is so important, technology is not going to cut it. You need people.
Thank you, Hank. Tony?
I think my takeaway for this group is we focus so much on diversity and equity, right? I think we need to focus on belonging, right? I think if you focus on the belonging in your companies, you're going to attract diverse talent. You're going to retain diverse talent, and you'll be able to advance your talent that you have regardless of their diversity dimension. So I think that's where I want to just leave us with, is that sense of belonging is so important. It's actually hardwired in our DNA. And so if you can think about that and think about your experience of being an outsider, and then flipping it, you would make sure that you have high-performing teams and an inclusive culture that's going to really drive your corporation's growth and help you get to the future state.
Thank you, Tony. John?
Well, for me, I think the mantra is just always be learning and keep an open mind, because on all these topics, whether it's technology or the DE&I or sourcing globally or direct sourcing, which when I first heard of it, I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea. As I started to think about it and listen to Cesar a little more, I'm like, I might work for my really good clients. Maybe we can have a piece of that, you know? So, you know, we're in a business that operated the same way for many, many, many years and is now in a rapid state of change. So we've got to be, you know, not just focused on today, but training our people and having them keep an open mind to what we should be doing tomorrow and taking advantage of it. So that's
Thank you. Thank you so much. And like I said at the beginning, for being so generous with your time and energy, sharing with us your expertise. And thank you for being here with us as members of the audience. And I wanted to give this opportunity, 5-10 minutes. If you have any questions or anything that stood out to you from our panel comments. Yes.
If the panel doesn't mind, I'm going to do a little bit of a shift coming from the lens of not necessarily talent for your clients, but talent internally. I come from the old school of working 7:30, and that was still too late coming in to 6 o'clock at night, and using the work-life integration. How are you guys hiring your talent and now taking that model to where their production is still there, but bringing in that talent that is looking for more of a work-life integration when they don't know how to do business yet?
That was, no, I love it.
It's never about this recruiter,
Yeah.
talent.
You're
And what
right.
you guys are doing that
You're
might
right.
be a little different than you've done in the past.
No, you're right. That conversation we probably have every day. That's a big challenge. I mean, we're great at, we always prioritize how can we hire better for our clients, because that's who we are, right? We got to fill those recs. But yeah, you have to hire the right people. I mean, and we try to do the same thing. I think listen to what the talent wants. I mean, coming at 7:30, I grew up just like that. Fax machines. I couldn't leave. I had to be the last one to leave. I had to turn the lights off. But I will tell you that, that doesn't, because you do that doesn't mean you're going to be successful, right? It's what do we measure success? It's define what measures success and hold them accountable to that. And if they need to work from home, they work from home. Like in my organization, when a staffing firm that I ran, we were fully remote before the pandemic. It wasn't a change, and that was kind of rare in the staffing industry, because you had to be there, you have to see you have to hear on the phone, you have to check how many emails you're on and stuff like that. But I just think it's listening to the talent and identify what's success and let them succeed and manage on results, And I always maybe partnering a good mentor, a good coach, like an accountability partner to help them along the way with a senior level, balance them out if you're going to hire junior resources with let's say a more senior seasoned person.
John, what are you going to say?
I agree. You were probably early on focused on accountability. And I've found that the new people that we've hired, they don't want to work in the office necessarily, and they don't want to work such rigid hours, but they do want to know, and they always ask right up front, what do I need to do to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
How can I tell if I'm doing well? Am I meeting your expectations? I find this newer generation is asking some good questions, and they want to be successful, but they just don't want that rigid structure that we all grew up with and that we valued. And probably put too much faith in, So we're changing, It's hard, but we're changing.
Any other questions or anything that stood out? Yes,
Well,
Nancy.
I want to go back to what I heard Tony talk about, in terms of that definition of DEI. And what struck me is that you can't expect a staffing company to create your DEI for you, right? We might be able to find you the diversity you're looking for, but ultimately the equity and inclusion aspects of them have to happen within the corporate culture, and there has to be programs in place to manage that and make sure that that candidate and those candidates are successful then going forward to the ultimate end goal of inclusion, or rather belonging. And so I'm just wondering, on the front end here, what is there that we can do to help to educate our clients on those other two buckets that are ultimately their responsibility?
I think one, right? Your staff should be diverse. I mean, that's one of the things, if I'm looking at vendors to support my staffing needs, I need their corporations to look like the global world that we live in. That's one, right? Two, I think you need to make sure that once you place a candidate at the on-site, that you're checking in on that candidate, because what is said may not be what is being actually done. And you don't want to put that candidate in a situation where they can't thrive and be successful, because at the end of the day, you'll be held accountable. Hopefully, did I answer your question?
Yeah, to some degree, absolutely. But I do think that there has to be some institutional change on the client side in order for that to actually, really be integrated.
But I mean, I don't think you can institutionalize diversity, right?
No, but equity and inclusion. That's what I'm saying.
Inclusion, right? I think you can't even mandate it, right? If you are a vendor, you can't mandate anything. Employees, 54% of employees that were surveyed in a Gartner survey said that their companies today are not putting enough emphasis on diversity, right? So if that's the case, you have two choices. Either work with companies that mirror your values and how you want to show up and how you want your candidates to be successful and your corporate values. Or you have to make sure that at the end of the day that your contingent worker who's placed on that job feels supported. Because if that's the case, if we can mandate or institutionalize diversity, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
So I have a question around business development and growth of your company, specifically for the staffing company owners. The war for talent, war retention is real, but it's also a phase that we're dealing with, and it's going to go away eventually. In terms of, and I recently read a publication that having access to the key decision makers, especially at the corporate level, is one of the key challenges for the staffing company owners to be able to diversify their portfolios and grow their businesses. Talk maybe from that perspective, how do you guys think about that? What are some of the strategies that you guys are currently implementing at your companies that really puts you at least a little bit ahead of the curve to be able to diversify your business, get access to different other companies so that you can provide your services?
Great question.
I think the fact that we're sitting here on the crossover day between SIM and TechServe, the perfect example. I think that senior level IT executives don't get to spend a lot of time on staffing. They rely on having great staffs, but they're so busy and strategic, you don't get to probably talk to recruiters that much. And we, likewise, we wanted to see our clients more, but COVID notwithstanding, it's hard to get face time. So the senior, the TechServe and SIM is a natural combination that I think it works for both parties.
I think sending out, thousands of generated emails works. That's a joke. I would definitely say You know what's wild is that I've been doing that for a long time, the staffing business for a long time, and I think that hiring managers and staffing professionals, they literally want the same thing, right? Hiring managers are dying for them to fill positions, and we want to fill positions. But how do they get to that decision maker is typically the hardest part of our job, at least from a sales perspective, because, you know, hiring managers, I'm sure Tony probably get 1,000 calls a week, you know, from the same type of service, sounding the same type of way, and you're getting all those messages as well. So I think creating new, unique marketing strategies, something that we've implemented, and we did it about 3 years ago, and we piloted and it worked out pretty well. And I'll give you some stats on that. But we created a separate podcast to interview specifically IT leaders to talk about, you know, perspectives, trends, challenges in the market. Just it puts them, not only it's a good opportunity for them to talk about, you know, and market for themselves, but also their organization. But it also created an opportunity to meet an executive that you probably, you know, on that hit list that we're always trying to get to, that one client that we can't ever get in front of. It gave us that, it became that natural. And because once the hiring manager or the executive feels that we're there to help try to solve a problem, then that's when the business, you have an opportunity, you have a shot at least, right? And then we got to deliver. That's definitely one way that's worked. I will let you know that, you know, since I think in 2021, this year alone, the firm that, you know, we leverage this podcast strategy with, we opened up 27 new accounts because of it. So it's effective, but you have to really buy into it, and it can't be something that you just try out and you can't give up on it, because sometimes it doesn't work right away. You got to commit to that strategy and do it, no matter how hard it is, and no matter how when you don't get results, you just got to see through it. But I will tell you that has been the most effective strategy I've seen in a long time, at least for the staffing, at least for my IT staffing practice.
I think panels also is another, just an extent, it's like a podcast times 4, you know, getting a number of IT managers together in a panel.
Absolutely.
They love doing it, they love to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And whether it's been virtual, or, you know, it's been virtual since COVID, or live, and hopefully we'll be live again. I know I have Larry Hemway, I see him here. He's a marketing guy, he's great at putting panels together. He's helped several guys in my Tom Nunn group put panels together, and they've had great success. As long as the technology works.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, I think anything that gets people together, especially coming out of this terrible time we've been in the last year and a half, is going to be good for everybody.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're out of time, but thank you so much for being here with us and sharing with us this session. I've learned a lot for sure, and if we want to continue the conversation later tonight, networking opportunities. But yeah, I think it's a wrap.
All right.
Thank you.